Alrighty guys, welcome to the video. So today what I wanted to do is a custom operating system showdown. And the main reason why I wanted to make this video is that it's a very hotly requested topic in my comment section. And I think the reason why most people download these custom operating systems is that they tend to have claims of massive improvements in responsiveness and sometimes even performance uplifts in games. So for example, like frames per second, frame times, etc. And so I wanted to do a review of all of them and have a sort of testing methodology that I wanted to give you guys so that way you can be informed about them. And how do I feel about all these different operating systems? And so, with that being said, I did have a sort of, we'll say, automatic fails criteria where I didn't include a couple of them for what I consider to be very fair reasons. And so, if yours wasn't included, it will usually be because of one of these three causes. And so my automatic fails are it must be supported actively. This is because new features are going to come out or new bugs are going to come out. You're going to open up a new game and it's just not going to work. Or you're going to open up a new application that's just not going to have program compatibility for your operating system. So that's why you're going to need that support. And new features come out with each new Windows, we'll say, update. And so, for example, 20H2, which I believe is fall 2020 update, you need hardware. If you want to use NVIDIA's DLSS 3 or frame generation, you need hardware accelerated GPU scheduling, and that was added in the fall of 2020. So the older versions of Windows do not support that. And so if you want to use frame generation, too bad, you're SOL. So that's why I feel strongly about this one, that it needs to be included. And then the second one is it must have a simple download page or a file system. And this is because a couple of these ISOs will just randomly redirect you to web pages, or they'll have pop-ups, and these pop-ups are not harmless. And a lot of these redirects are very annoying. And so I wanted to make this a sort of minimum bar. So a couple of them will have custom websites that they've made, like for example, foxos.com or something. I don't know if that's actually one, but they'll have something like that. And essentially they'll just have a simple download that you can take right off the website, or they'll have a Discord page, or they'll have a Google Drive. But I don't want to have somebody using a host website that has a bunch of annoying pop-ups and stuff, and I don't want the file to be named anything else other than the actual file name and the version or the person. So, like for example, Windows 10 22H2 Fox OS, something like that. I don't want it to have anything else other than those things, because if that's the case, it feels like it's really prone to, let's say, sketchy behavior like viruses and stuff. And so that's the next thing. And then number three, it must be free, because Windows 10 and Windows 11 are very much free. And I feel like that's a really important criteria, because unless you have some massive performance uplift, like 20 or 30%, there's no reason you should be charging. That's just my opinion. But with that being said, the first person that we're going to, let's say, introduce or give a shout out to is Cat Gamer OP. He's the creator of Fox OS, and all of these ones are going to be in line or essentially symmetrical to who I'm ordering them with. So Fox OS is the first, Kirby, which is Kirby OS, Kernel or Kernel OS, and then I'm Ribby or XOS. This one is actually kind of hard to find, so this is why I included these different links to them, because this is his Discord, which is where you can find the download for it. But other than that, it was actually pretty hard to find because it's not exactly the most popular one. And then Bill Gates for Windows Stock needs no introduction. And then Atlas OS, which is actually a really popular one that just got featured on Linus's Tech Tips channel. And then Ghost Spectre was the last one, which is probably the most common one that most people know about. So with that being said, I did have a pretty strict testing methodology that I wanted to kind of go over and give you guys an example for. So for the CPU, I locked it to 5 gigahertz with the BCLK and ECLK clock, and I disabled the idles so it's running at 100%. And those are the commands to do it. And then for the GPU, I locked it to 2900 megahertz and 1050 millivolts. And then using the Windows registry to obviously do the disabling of power saving features for the GPU. And this is to take out the variability of power plans and other problems that are just not necessarily very easy to control that can actually affect the performance, like fluctuating CPU and GPU clocks. So that's the first thing, because those are the two biggest components in your system that will affect performance the most. And then my Windows measurement criteria was I had to wait 10 minutes before counting values after a restart. So At the beginning of Windows after a restart, you'll notice that a bunch of services in the task manager will be opening and closing at any random point for the first 5 to 10 minutes. And this is so that it can do a bunch of the automatic things that it needs to check up on, so to speak. So that's why I waited 10 minutes to take care of that variability when measuring FPS or latency mon values, and no opening of any other services or apps. So I made sure that my tray was empty. I made sure the task manager was empty and that there was no third-party stuff like Razer or anything like that. It had to be just bone stock, whatever was included with the operating system when it came here, and one game or application that I used, nothing else. And then, with that being said, DPC latency and latency mon, you'll notice that the main thing that is actually pretty consistent is that all of them are pretty similar across the board in terms of latency values, and all of them are significantly better than stock. So there's sort of a pattern that you're going to see going forward where as long as you just don't have stock windows, you're going to see a drastic improvement in latency values. So that's the first thing. And then interrupt to process latency. What you'll also start to notice too is that these first four on the left tend to be what I would consider extremely tweaked operating systems or heavily operated system tweaked versions. And then you'll notice the ones on the right tend to be like kind of medium or light tweaks. And they tend to do this for compatibility reasons. And so that's the reason why you'll see that the values will kind of be a little bit higher or lower for some of them, is because they sometimes will take out more features or some will take out less. And then the next thing is ISR, or interrupt to service routine. And you'll notice that it actually is pretty similar across the board. All of them are basically about twice as fast as the stock Windows version. So yeah, that's an interesting fact. And then the final one, which is the one that tends to be talked about the most or the most obsessed over, I would say, is the processes, threads, and handles. And you can check this for yourself in the Task Manager CPU tab. And again, I waited 10 minutes before actually deciding what the final value was, because at the beginning a lot of these will have very drastic fluctuations, and I wanted to wait as long as I could, which was about 10 minutes for the average, to give the best sort of idea as to how close each of these can get to being, as like how much was actually trimmed down and how much of this is just necessary background tasks that have to be completed. And so again, you'll notice that basically everything is better than stock by a country mile, and the extremely tweaked ones also reflect that as well. 40 processes, I'm pretty sure Windows needs like 20 or 30 to function like at all. So the fact that they're able to get it down to 40 is kind of insane, and only half the threads and nearly 7 times or 4 times something like that of handles decreased. It's definitely an insane improvement, and you'll notice that very much when you're opening different applications and stuff. And so the next thing that I know was definitely heavily talked about in other videos that were doing custom operating system comparisons is that they tend to have specific games that are outliers, like, oh, Apex Legends is 10 to 15% faster on specifically, we'll say, Kirby OS or something like that. And I think that the main reason why that happens is that a lot of these operating systems will have custom power plans, and with the testing methodology that I have, I restrict a lot of that potential to be there, because obviously if you have a power plan, that's a labyrinth of stuff to list that's very difficult to explain in a video. So that's why I wanted to keep that testing methodology. But all of them were within 1 to 5% of stock windows. So you're not going to get a huge benefit in frames per second or frame times. What you are going to get, though, is a drastic improvement in responsiveness and input lag. You will notice it immediately. Just go to, for example, one of these 4 on the bottom left. All of them are going to be insanely responsive as soon as you open it. Things close and open immediately. Whereas if you do it on stock Windows, there is the occasional time where it will just hang for a second or two, or things will have problems closing, right? And then, like I said, all of the games were tested after 10 minutes, so that way I could take that variable out of the problem, like FPS and frame times. So that's the main thing. And so hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I know it might not have been necessarily what you guys were looking forward to. I know that you guys probably were hoping to see like 15% higher in CSGO, like maybe stock Windows will give me that sort of insane, like, problem to have. So that's the main reason why I wanted to make this video, is that I wanted to see for myself if I could recreate those claims that a lot of the people made. And like I said, I'm willing to be wrong about it. I'm willing to say that there could be flaws in my methodology. It could be other things that I'm not taking into account, but as far as what I tested, I did not see any measurable differences in the values that I was specifically talking about. And so, like I said, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want me to cover other topics as well. And take it easy, guys. My name is Savaterix, and I'm out.